Imagine, in the heart of Tehran, in broad daylight, thousands of angry people are scaling the walls of the American embassy. A wave of noise, slogans, commotion, and fear that would change the course of history. In seconds, the guns fell silent, the doors were broken down, and the American citizens inside the embassy were at the mercy of the enemy. But this story is not just about those who were taken prisoner. This is the story of the 6 Americans who survived in the midst of this very chaos. They not only hid in the streets of Tehran, but also became part of the most dangerous rescue operation in the world. An operation that was not a Hollywood movie, but a reality hidden behind the scenes of Hollywood. You're watching The Last Breath. Tehran Riot. November 4th, 1979. A storm was brewing in the streets of Tehran. Thousands of angry Iranian protesters gathered outside the U.S. Embassy. They carried banners, flags, and wooden poles, and their slogans were full of hatred against America. Moments later, the crowd scaled the embassy walls and entered. Doors were smashed, windows were shattered, and chaos spread everywhere. The 58 American citizens in the embassy were the target of the attack. Security guards surrendered at the sight of such a large crowd, and within hours, 52 American diplomats and workers were captured by the protesters. Their demand was simple: send back Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, or be prepared to see the dead bodies of your people. This whole incident did not happen suddenly. The groundwork had been laid months earlier. In January 1979, the King of Iran, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, fled the country under pressure from public protests. His government had American support, but the Iranian people had risen up against the Shah. The Shah's 38-year rule had entangled the country in the influence of Western powers. Iran's oil was controlled by the United States, decisions were made at Washington's behest, and the people were mired in poverty. The Shah's secret police, SAVAK, was notorious for suppressing any voice. People trembled at the mention of his name. In this environment, one man returned from exile, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. He was not only a religious leader, but also a center of public anger. Under his leadership, the revolution succeeded and Iran's system changed from a monarchy to the Islamic. Growing hatred of America. The anger of the Iranian people increased when they learned that the Shah was being sheltered by the United States. They wanted the Shah to return, stand trial, and face the wrath of the people. Under this demand, the protesters stormed the American embassy. But during the turmoil, an incident occurred that changed the course of history. The story of the escape of 6 Americans. When the protesters broke in, 6 American diplomats managed to sneak out of the embassy through a secret door. They were Robert Anders, consular officer; Mark Lijek, vice consul; Cora Lijek, Immigration Department; Joseph Stafford, political officer; Kathleen Stafford, visa section; Lee Schatz, agricultural statistics station. These 6 men ran around the streets of Tehran. They had no plan, no shelter. At every moment, there was a danger that someone would recognize them, and they too would fall into the hands of the mob. They asked for help from several embassies, but all refused. No one wanted to face the wrath of the Iranian revolutionaries. Finally, the Canadian ambassador, Ken Taylor, risked his life and sheltered them in his home. For the next 3 months, these 6 Americans hid in the Canadian ambassador's house in extreme secrecy. They could not even go near a window. It was impossible to get out. A small mistake could have meant their death. CIA plan. When the U.S. government learned that 6 diplomats were alive and hiding in Tehran, the news was kept top secret. If this had come out, not only their lives would have been in danger, but the rest of the 52 hostages would have been doomed as well. The CIA made several plans to save them. Sometimes they thought of getting them out in Iranian disguise, sometimes hiding them through the United Nations, but each option was too risky. Here came CIA expert Tony Mendez. He proposed a plan that sounded crazy, but was actually possible. The plan was to get these 6 Americans out of Tehran under the guise of fake Hollywood science fiction film. Argo, the film that was not real. Tony Mendez created a fake film production house in Hollywood. A real office was rented for this. A fake film script was prepared, posters were printed, and false news was spread in the media that a major science fiction film, Argo, was going to be made. Such an atmosphere was created that if anyone did research, they would find this film to be real. Even interviews with the fake producers were published. 6 Americans were identified as members of the film team. Some were made screenwriters, some were made directors, some were cinematographers. They were all given fake Canadian passports and business cards. Everyone was trained on how to behave at the airport, how to answer questions, and how to behave confidently. Tony Mendez himself arrived in Tehran in January 1980 with a fake identity. He was in the guise of a Canadian film producer who had come to find locations for a science fiction film. His documents were absolutely correct, and the news published in the media was further strengthening their cover. After meeting with the Canadian ambassador Ken Taylor, the 6 Americans were groomed. They were briefed for several days. Rehearsals were held for every question, every possible situation. Finally, the day came when they had to go to Tehran airport. This moment stood between their life and death. If any officer had any doubts, everything could have ended. There were thousands of people at the airport. The 6 Americans, disguised as film crews, lined up like ordinary passengers. One officer stared at their passports for a long time. Another checked the production documents. But their confidence in the story they had prepared were so strong that no one had any doubts. The Canadian embassy was on standby, so that if there was a verification call, they could immediately confirm it. Fortunately, that moment did not come. Finally, the boarding announcement was made. Everyone boarded the plane with peace of mind and took their SE. The secret that was hidden for years. These 6 Americans arrived safely in Europe and were secretly transferred to the United States from there. No news was leaked. No headlines were made in the newspapers. No announcements were made on TV. Everything was kept top secret so as not to endanger the rest of the hostages and the Canadian government. The whole story was kept secret for 17 years. Then in 1997, the CIA made the classified documents of this mission public, and the world learned that Argo was not just a movie, but a secret rescue operation. While the 6 Americans escaped through this mission, the remaining 52 American prisoners were held in Iranian custody for 444 days. Finally, on January 20th, 1981, when Ronald Reagan was sworn in as U.S. president, Iran released these hostages. Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who caused this whole crisis, died of cancer in the United States in July 1980. Pushpin viewers, this was the detailed story of Argo Mission. You were watching The Last Breath. Hope you liked this story. Do share your thoughts in the comments. See you again in the next video.